Alright guys, so as some of you may remember, we made these pieces of steel about a week ago. And this is the triple Damascus, the Damascus made from 3 steels. And we're going to continue working on this, guys. So what we're going to do today is we're going to work on our next piece, and we are going to be drawing it out and twisting it to see what the pattern looks like. But I don't really have a twisting machine yet. I'm going to build one in the near future that is electric. But for now, I'm going to build one that is a handheld one. Well, not handheld, but hand cranked one, so we can get the twist that we need. Alright guys, so bear with me on this drawing, but pretty much I'm going to do something like this. This is going to be a piece of square tubing, another piece of square tubing, another piece of square tubing. And on this side, we're going to have a static piece of square tubing where we're going to be able to fit in the piece of steel we're going to use, and we're going to have some bolts to help tighten it in case it's smaller than what the square tubing is. And on this side, we're going to have a pipe. And through that pipe, we're going to be doing a piece of round stock, which then has another piece of square tubing welded to it. And this one will also have the bolts. And pretty much this is going to be the piece that twists. It's going to sit inside of this pipe, and it's going to be free floating in there. And as we twist, we're going to be applying pressure in this direction, because whenever you twist the steel, it's going to contract a little bit. Normally you would have this piece right here move closer, but in this case this is going to be static, and this is where it's going to move. And we're going to have like a nut or something here where we can tie another piece of round, and then it's going to be an L shape, so we can use as a handle to twist it around. But also I want this nut here in case I want to remove this. I can use this nut, and I can use an impact wrench to be able to cause the twisting motion if it's too thick or I don't want to twist it by hand or whatever. And then this part right here, I don't know if I've said before, but this will go inside of the vise, and the vise is going to hold it. So it's very, very simple, very, very easy build to make. So we're going to go on ahead and build that. Alright guys, so the reason why I decided to make this very simple build is because I've wanted a very simple crank twisting jig. That way I can use when I'm not doing a lot of steel and I just need to quickly crank it out. This way I can just put it on the vise and crank it out. And I also wanted to add that nut in case, for example, I don't feel like twisting it by hand. I need a really, really good tight twist. I can use a high-powered torque wrench. That way I can get a very, very good tight pattern without, obviously having to overwork my shoulder. Especially if, let's say, I'm making a pretty big batch of twist Damascus knives and I'm preparing a lot of steel ahead of time. I can go that route versus, overworking my arm. And then, I'm a believer in, if you can find a way to do it easier with less stress, go for it. It's the same way as I like to use machines to forge whenever I can versus just hand forging, because while hand forging is very cool to do, it also takes its toll on the body, and there's a limited amount of work you can do in a certain amount of time if you're not using tools. So with my very simple twisting machine made, we're going to work down the steel to about 3/4 by 3/4. That way we can put it into the jig. A lot of things came up while I was using the jig, and I will explain them here shortly. But this is a learning process. I just saw a video of somebody doing twisting steel in a very, very similar jig, and I was like, that sounds very cool. I can make that twisting machine. So then I did a couple of tweaks myself, and so this is what I ended up with. So at first I tried to twist it by hand, and as you can see, it didn't really go. And that was because of the weight of where my anvil sits. So here I used an impact wrench, and it just stripped it from how the nuts were holding it.
So I had to undo the nuts and figure out a better way. Originally I was going to use thicker bolts, but I did not have a tap and die for it. So I ended up going with slightly smaller bolts. These are 1/4 inch. I intended to use 3/8, so they kind of slipped. So I'm drawing it down a little bit more, and I'm going to use some blocks I'm putting in there, a different size square tubing, and now as you can see, it's twisting a lot better. One issue I am running into is that my stand is very light. It has really nothing holding it down, and it's not bolted down to the ground so I can move it around. So it's kind of just like moving around. I didn't have it bolted down. I have some weights on it, but it's not enough, so it moves around. So I'm gonna have to think of a way to bolt it down, make a new one, or just bolt it down with some bolts. One other thing that came up is that as I was twisting it, it lost its heat a little too fast and it started to shear, and that is just because I don't have a proper setup and it's my first time, so I was losing heat and not getting as much work as I wanted done. So I just opted out to draw it out from there and hope the twist was enough instead of risking shearing it even more. And also, let's be honest, it was kind of pretty late and I didn't want to make any more noise, so I wanted to finish it off as fast as possible. So here it is the next day, and I am forging out the tip to my knife. I've already cut off the front portion, which is what held the piece in the vise or in the jig part. And I cut it off right where the twist starts. That way, whenever we're forging in our tip, it is all twist material. And what I'm going to be making are some small paring knives or steak knives. Whatever you really want to use, is just going to be a very small paring knife type knife. As well as with the very last piece of the billet, I'm going to go on ahead and make another one, but a hidden tang. That way I can use all of it, even if it doesn't have the pattern. It's still a very high layer Damascus, and there's no point wasting that. So I have some measurements already written down on my anvil, that way I know where I need to go with it. And here I'm spacing out my blade and making a notch so I can start on the handle portion. These knives are going to be full tang, so I separated about 4 inches from my tang portion, and from there I'll draw it out. It was a lot of fun to forge these guys out, and it was a bit of a workout. I'm not used to forging multiple knives in one set, and in this set I think I forged out 4. I only show the forging of 3, but here I'm cutting off the very first one where the tang ends, so that I can begin on forging in the tip for the next one. And as the video goes on, I will be alternating between the multiple knives, and we're probably gonna lose track. And while I was editing it, I was losing track, but I was working on multiple knives at once, such as this one. This is knife 1, and I'm getting those final details in on the tang of the knife. And here I'm switching off to knife number 2 to keep refining that tip, and I keep working it in. For the most part, I'm going back between the anvil and the press. I'm trying to keep it a consistent thickness. In this case, it is 1/8 thick. I don't want it to be any thicker than that, which is roughly the thickness that I want these knives to be. So I'm working within those thicknesses. I won't be drawing out the bevels for these knives because they are already relatively thin, and I want to keep them at about 1 inch of width. So I'm taking care of the 1 inch, and I'm just gonna grind out the bevels afterwards. Here on the next part, I kind of just jumped to another knife, and that is because I as anybody else who does their recording and does videos and stuff, I set up my whole camera and I set everything up so that I could record when I chopped it off and started on the final piece, but I forgot to hit record, and so I didn't show it. It happens to the best of us, and it happened to me, and it's happened many times. I just never bring it up, but I definitely forgot to show myself cutting off the knife from this piece. So the piece you see me working on here is the little butt piece of the twist Damascus, which this piece is comprised of like 50 or 60% from the piece that I used to twist it, and maybe 20 or 30% of the actual twist Damascus. So what I did was forge in the tip, and then from the rest I'm gonna isolate my tang and draw out a hidden tang. That way I can have a full-size usable knife. The edge is roughly the same size as my other knives, but this one is a hidden tang because it saves that on material. I could have done this for all the knives, but I chose to do full tangs just because I felt like it was quicker and easier to do. So here I have the two knives. One ended up being slightly bigger than the other, so I'm gonna do the smaller one first, and then afterwards I will trace it onto the bigger one. That way we have two relatively identical knives. Since I forged them relatively close to shape, all I did was really take a little tiny bit off of the original profile of the knife, and that way I wasted as little steel as possible. And now that I have the profile right where I want it, I'm going to take it to the surface grinder, and I'm going to clean up all the sides and make sure I get rid of all the forge scale and the majority of the forge marks before we go into our quench. One issue that I did run into was the fact that my drill bits are very dull, and so I ended up having to go in with one of these multiple size drill bits. For the life of me, I can't remember what they're called, but they come in handy. I normally use them to make extra holes on my knives, but in this case I use them to do the actual pinholes up to 1/4.
Alright guys, so I am out of the temper. Knives came out pretty good. They're already pretty thin, which I was going for. And so I'm not really showing all of them. I'm kind of just showing these two. And pretty much one of them. You can see the pattern already starting to pop out. And since it wasn't too tight of a twist because the steel was already starting to shear, I kind of didn't want to twist it too tight. But you can definitely see the pattern at an angle. And it is tight enough to where you can see the movement, but also not so tight to where all you see are the lines going down or at an angle. I'm working on another project I've been working for a few months already. It's kind of been on the back burner, and that's a lot tighter of a pattern on it, and that one will have the pattern really tight compared to this. This is more of a looser pattern. But overall, they're looking pretty good. We're going to go on ahead and clean them up with the surface grinder and grinding our bevels.
So while you saw 4 knives there, I am just doing 2 on the video, and being as I am editing this right now and it is Saturday night, I will inform you that I did not finish them all. So the other 2 that weren't these 2 full tang knives, they will be available in the near future, probably by next week's video. I should have them done in the next day or 2. And even though I did my best, I was unfortunately not able to finish all 4. I got the other 2 pretty far along, but doing 4 knives is a lot of work. So I chose to do the ones that carry the full twist Damascus pattern on them, since they are the ones for this video.
Alright guys, so for the handles, we're going to go with this, it's stabilized. I want to say this is canary wood. It definitely has the keys to it. I did send some of this to get stabilized, so I'm pretty sure this is the canary wood, and I'm gonna be going on ahead and gluing it up to this piece. And I believe I can get both my handles out of this guy. It's more than plenty of material, and this has a really beautiful coloring on it, so I think it's gonna look very nice once it's all said and done. So let's go on ahead and glue these pieces on here. Once they're glued, we can go on ahead and cut them, but it's a lot easier, I found, to glue them first versus having to glue everything together at once. It's just a lot easier to go this route.
I have found that doing this method works pretty well. I use 5-minute epoxy to do it, but I find that it definitely does. It takes a little bit longer, but it makes the overall process a lot easier, and I like to weigh it down with a couple of blocks of random steel I have here in the shop. Fortunately, this block was pretty big, so I can fit both knives on it, and I drill them all in one go. Before, I would have cut them into separate blocks and then drilled them separately, but I found that if I just drill them both at the same time, since they both fit, I can then cut them both out exactly at the same time afterwards, because if not, I'm cutting blocks and then I'm drilling holes, then I'm marking them, then I'm cutting them again, and I feel like that's just inefficient and a waste of time. Now with the handles ready, it's time to go for our glue up. This is the part of the video where I like to ask you guys, if you've gotten this far, that I would assume means you like the video and you like the content. So do me a favor and check if you are subscribed, and if you are not, definitely consider subscribing and joining the channel. About 86% of my viewers in the last 28 days are not subscribed according to my metrics, so I would really appreciate that. And that is a free and easy way to help support the channel and support the work that I do. As I brought up before, this knife is available for sale in case anybody wants to pick it up, either one of these, and that is a monetary way in which you can help support the channel and help support my making of all these videos and making cool knives. I'm working on quite a few cool ones for the next upcoming weeks as well. Some stuff that I haven't seen anybody else try before. I'm not guaranteeing that I'm going to succeed, but I definitely guarantee I will be making a video on it. It will be cool. And also, we're going to be revisiting the graveyard, Damascus, and hopefully making a knife that actually has no defects in it this time. So definitely stay tuned for that in the upcoming weeks. Also, I will be finishing off the other two knives, so expect to see them by next week on the website. I'll probably bring it up on the next video. As of late, I've been trying to do more knives in one go, but it is very difficult, even if they are smaller knives. Bigger knives is a no-go. It's too much hand sanding, but smaller knives I thought I could get away with, but even smaller knives, 2 or 3 is the max I can make in a week. One little trick that I like to do is I like to put nail polish on my knives. I tape off all the metal parts that are on the knife, and I do nail polish around it. Here is a rabbit that I saw in my front yard. But back to nail polish. I nail polish all the way around it so that the coffee and the acid will not stain the wood, and it works pretty well. Here I'm doing my maker's mark. Always remember to mark your knives. And we move to our sharpening. This guy sharpened very well, and it turned out to be incredibly sharp because of the thinness of the knife. It will make a very great paring knife. Or in my initial thought, I was thinking I was making some steak knives, because I would like a steak knife myself. and I was very pleased with how very sharp they ended up being. Overall, it was a very fun project. I had a lot of fun building this, especially making that twisting jig, which I will be doing a lot of modifications to, so stay tuned for that. I probably won't record them, but I will be doing modifications so that I can use it on the next video or the video after that with the Graveyard Damascus. We're going to go on ahead and twist it to see what it looks like, so stay tuned for that. But as always, guys, thank you very much for watching. I greatly appreciate y'all, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.